Hey, everybody. Welcome to the UGASports Live podcast. My name is Rodney Nabulsi. I am back this week after being gone last week. I'm joined by Jake Roos, the recruiting savant at UGASports.com, and, of course, former Georgia Bulldogs head coach Jim Donnan, Hall of Famer, and the reason everybody's tuned in. Hello to everybody on our Facebook feed and everyone watching on YouTube. We like to say, well, we appreciate you liking our pages and giving us the thumbs up there. We appreciate it. If you would share this, that would really, really help out. And, of course, let us know how our audio is. We always like to double-check. Big shout-out to our friends at Athens Ford, Aaron Overhead Doors, Your Pie, Academia Brewing Company, and the new Classic City Eats. We're not at Champy's. I know. We're no longer at Champy's. We are now at this place. We're in the same building, but it is now called Classic City Eats. They have changed their branding, and it allows the guys that, were formerly running the former Champy's to do more. So Champy's, famous for their fried chicken, and you can still get that freshly made fried chicken. You walk in and people think that they just have it under a heat lamp like a Popeyes or something like that. No. When you come in, they say, look, it's going to take 15, 20 minutes for your chicken to get here because we're going to take a fresh piece, and fry it now. So it's still the same thing. But they have a lot more on the menu. I'm most excited about the Moho Barbecue. We had a Christmas party here in January. It's the only time we could do it. And that's the first time they brought out that Moho Barbecue. When you get it on a sandwich, it is phenomenal. So shout out to Josh and Amy for having switching this over to Classic City Eats when you come into town. And they wanted something that was Athens-centric. So big shout out to Josh and Amy for
same great service, same great food, expanded menu,
but more food.
Exactly.
So it's a win-win. So
and they still got 40s, which is what's
a wise man changes and a fool never does.
Yep. There you go.
That's my man. He's making his move.
Yeah, you go out on your own. You become
he's an entrepreneur. He knows how to do it.
Well, everything he's done has been successful, so right. I'm impressed. Like, I love this, the baskets you can get here. They have the fried green tomatoes, the nachos, which we're about to get, hush puppies. You can get a basket of hush puppies. Not everywhere you go can you get that, The jalapenos, the fried jalapenos, one of my favorite. But, of course, most importantly,
they kept the sausage.
Kept the smoked sausage, pickle, and cheese plate. Again, folks, if you've never had the sausage here, you can't buy it anywhere else. It's not like you got some Jimmy Dean or what's that?
Johnsonville.
Yeah, Johnson. It's not the same. This is stuff you can't get anywhere else. This sausage is incredible. So when you get a chance, swing by and try it out. Okay, Coach, I'm just got back from the Combine.
Give us a report, man.
You don't want to hear me talk about that.
We want to talk about your eating for sure.
Yeah, that's the only reason I go to Indianapolis is to eat the food up there. But no, it was.
But it was impressive. Fortunately, I think a lot of people got to watch it. Maybe that wouldn't because they had so much of it at night live. Yep. And it certainly was. They did a good job the way they. Showed the timing. Always come back, and anybody they missed, they would show them real quick. But, I thought from offensive perspective, Wilson certainly helped himself coming in at 350 and running that unbelievable 10-yard split in his 40-yard dash and showed a lot of strength on the bench press. And then, of course, we knew what was going to happen with Thomas. He was going to be impressive. And what was the deal with Kinley there? Now, what did they say?
He said he wasn't going to – I think he's had a little nagging injury there, so he'll do more at Pro Day, but he didn't do the other stuff. But Salah Mckinley really – he looked great. He showed up – and you remember, when he first came out of Jacksonville –
he was sloppy.
He had some really bad weight, and each year he's looked better and better. When we saw him up there, he's in the 320 range. He looked better than I'd ever seen him.
Great.
The guy looked phenomenal. He was cut. And the composure with which he went through those interviews, talked to a few people, he really impressed them with his football knowledge and his drive and determination. They're like, look, if this kid can, I'll tell people this about the purpose of the Combine. A lot of people talk about, well, who made themselves money, who lost money. If you're going to the Combine, it does not take over for your film. What you show on film is more important. What your potential is more important
Always.
than how you do. But a lot of people get caught up in the 40 times, the bench presses, the shuttles. And I'm like, look, it's if you've ever gone and applied for a job, they're like, okay, we need your driver's license. We need your,
proof of residence.
We need your Social Security card. You'll spend the first half of your day in the Human Resources Department filling out forms. That's what the combine is, checking boxes.
Yeah,
okay, are you literally 6'6"?
Right.
Check.
I think that part's right, but I think the comparison to and the film certainly is the most prevalent thing for sure, but the interviews with the teams really help you too.
Yeah.
But when you go out there and you compare to other players of subsequent that are, similar, similar backgrounds and similar positions, then it gives you a really good idea of what a guy can do. We saw those two freaks, the one Becton kid from up there.
I love that guy.
Man.
Run so fast at 370 or whatever he was, 5'1", 40, and then that Wirtz kid.
Yeah, Wirtz.
34 and a half vertical and ran like a 4.8. So that puts a lot of pressure on where do you draft Thomas, compared to those two guys. But the film, and there's not many guys that started every game they ever played in, and the coaching he got. And then Wilson that really developed. So, and I think Swift just showed what he's all about, too, on the quickness. Not to mention his speed, too. He timed good. But when you watch the drills and all, they had some Willie off the pickle boat guys throwing the ball to him once in a while out there. They didn't have the regular quarterbacks, and you couldn't get a consistent throws.
Right.
But he really looked dynamic to me. And, of course, that's going to happen with a great, in running back. What he's been able to do in the SEC has been impressive, and we'll see how I think he'll go before Taylor, even though he had some good times. I think he will. And then, of course, there's a lot of been made too about Jake, about what he didn't do, and certainly his times and all that are something we knew were going to be, a detriment a little bit. But I heard he did really good on the interviews, and he did really good, in certain aspects, short passes. But, he's going to be a guy that the team's got to have an identity and want a guy. He's just not going to wow you with overwhelming arm strength and all that. But as far as just his resume is as good as anybody's, except maybe what Burrow did this year and Tua's, But it's going to be interesting to see how he does here in this climate, throwing to his receivers on his pro day. I think that's going to be big for him.
Well, it's like when we have kids, we watch their game film, and I go back to a Nick Chubb. You watch Nick Chubb run against subpar competition.
Sure.
So then we'd get him to come to a camp. Now, in the camp, he doesn't have the helmet on, doesn't have the shoulder pads, he's not running into guys, but we would see him up close and personal and say, okay, he is 5'11", he is 6 foot. How does he carry that weight? If I told you that Isaiah Wilson was 350 pounds, you're like, okay, well, that's overweight for the NFL. There aren't a lot of 350-pound guys in that league. And you're like, but when you see him and how he comports himself and then how he runs, again, he's checking boxes.
Sure.
Okay, he's a legit 350, but he's only 20% body fat. Hey, this kid's hands, people made a big deal out of Jake Fromm's hands. They're only, 8 and 7/8. But let's see how he throws it. Okay, well, that's fine, So you are able to check the heights and weights and structure. Then you do the interview. Okay, this guy's done well, but was it more of him just being lucky, or did he really know where to go with the ball? So when they put Fromm up on the board and they give him these different constructions and say, all right, where do you go here? What is this? Identify this, and they're running film and they're doing it fast. And he's like, okay, that's this. Here's where I'm going. Here's where I'm going. And he nails each one of those. You're like, okay, so the scouting report on you is correct. Or some of these other guys that showed up, they're like, oh, you're not exactly what we thought. So again, you can help yourself, you can hurt yourself, but it's not bigger than game film. We don't rank kids, and we get this all the time. Oh, he didn't go to camp, so you didn't rank him. No, we rank them off their film, but it helps to see them in person, and as you say, side by side with the best. When you watch DeAndre Swift and then you watch Taylor, you're like, is Taylor, has he had too many carries? You're like, no, this kid is fast. This kid looks great. And, again, until you see Swift do those little cuts, you don't realize how fast those cuts are. They look good on film, but when you see them in real life, you're like, this guy looked fantastic. And I think Swift really helped himself.
That was a classic. Jonathan Taylor, though, you always fall for that Wisconsin running back, and it just never works out. Ron Dane, who was it a couple years back, John Clay, those guys have. Melvin Gordon's done okay for himself, so props to him. But you got to worry about all the carries that they put on those guys.
One thing I would bring out, just because I have some Oklahoma ties, is that kid that played tackle for Oklahoma a couple years ago. Just came in and bombed just did a terrible job at the
Orlando Brown,
yep. Like 5'9", 40, and couldn't hardly do any bench press. He's been starting for the Ravens since he got there because when he put everything together and played football, he can do it. Some guys, I used to always say, hey, we're not going to have a weightlifting contest out there at Sanford Stadium, or we're not going to run the 40, Guys there's a reason. That's why I think too much is made about these 7-on-7 camps, You don't play football like that without a pass rush. You don't play football without pads. And although it's a great indicator of a lot of things, so we're talking about out of both sides of my mouth here. But I do feel like the combine is very, very reflective of what the national groupings are, though. How you compare nationally, and then that if you do poorly there and you've got poor film, you haven't got much of a chance.
Exactly. Again, I'm not trying to beat this idea to death, but just checking the boxes like, okay, we've seen your film. Let's see you in real life. And you watch those scouts, and you can just see them sizing these guys up, and they're checking them. And they also have the stuff that we don't see. Okay, they showed hours and hours of the guys going through drills. They don't show all the meetings, but what they don't show is how much time those guys spend at the medical center.
Oh,
they go over them with a fine-tooth comb. You had some guys that were there in the hospital doing X-rays and evaluations for 12 hours.
Found out some guys had some breaks. The kid at Florida is going to have surgery. Kid Moss' son's going to have surgery. A lot of times you slip through the cracks on that. But I think the big deal to me is it's just that everybody got to realize out there this is a business.
Yep.
These teams,
multi-million-dollar decisions.
These teams are these owners. They're putting out that big jack now, and the coaches have got to be the first guy they looked at, then the staff, then the evaluators, general managers, and then these scouts, these pro scouts. Unbelievable when a pro scout comes to visit Georgia. He'll come in here like at 9 o'clock in the morning. First thing they do, they bring donuts in so they can try to make you feel good, So if all of a sudden you got 5 or 6 or you got 6 dozen donuts laying out there, but seriously, they come in.
That's not a problem.
They come in and they want to talk.
Yeah.
Just like I would as going to a high school. They want to talk to the trainer. They want to talk to the academic people. They look back at their social media accounts. They do everything and do all that scanning before they get there. But I think one of the biggest positives that we have access to here that this Pro Football Focus, boy, the grading they do and the analytics they do prior to a kid, it really keeps a scout on his toes. You know what I mean? Because these guys, Brent Rollins and those guys, they're just fantastic. I didn't really have any idea until I got associated with what they do. They really do a great job. And then the other thing they do is they have these services that teams use that self-scout themselves and all that, which just saves a lot of time too. So I'm not just telling you that. For us to have Pro Football Focus on this deal right now, probably should charge everybody $3 more a month for that.
Well, I tell you, when I went to St. Elmo's,
it just went right over your head, didn't it?
No, I agree with the charging $3 more.
All you can think about is the steak.
Well, no, I was just saying the Pro Football Focus guys had reserved a big room up there, and they had a big dinner at the same time that we did. And I kept wanting to slide my bill. Hey, take care of the Pro Football Focus guys got this. Put it on their tab because every NFL team uses them now, and a ton of college ones do as well. So you're right. When they go in and they break these guys down, I did talk to one scout. He says, "I'm just here looking for a reason not to draft these guys." So you have to really be on your P's and Q's when you're up there. You know, he's not in a mean way. He's not trying to. He just said, look, you know, when there's this much money on the table, you can't make a mistake because, and this particular guy had worked for like 4 different teams. And he's
made a lot of mistakes.
He made mistakes, but he's been hired because he's made a lot of right decisions. You know, but he's like, you know, if you make if you make a huge mistake, you never hear the end of it.
Nacho.
Oh, outstanding.
Oh, my
strong.
No, well, you talked about.
You can't have anything if you hated St. Elmo's.
You talked about, you know, the guys, the performance, and the interview session, and especially Ronnie Brown over here says, "What are your thoughts on how polished the UGA players sounded at the podium?" He says I thought it was some of the best publicity you could get for UGA.
It was, and shout out to Frank Martin and the UGA communication, the football communication office over there, who actually went to the combine. Not all the other schools did this, but Frank Martin was there for every interview, and he had his big video camera out, and he asked the same question: what did Georgia do to prepare you for this moment? And the answers were fantastic. And if you don't see those in a promotional video soon, then
they were cutting them out already. I mean,
it'll be all one big piece. But
it was good.
Those guys. And as much as I bang on Kirby for not letting us talk to everybody, you know, that we'd like to, the guys that were up there, they did not stutter. They had great answers. J.R. Reed killed up there. DeAndre Swift was fantastic. Salah Mckinley did a great job. We always knew that Isaiah Wilson was going to be a good interview. He knocked it out of the park. Again, this is the same confidence those guys had. They carried into those meetings, because when you talk to the people about how did he do when he met with the Raiders, how did this meeting go, and those guys are like, oh, well, he did great. We really liked him. I'm like, well, are you just saying that? He goes, no, compared to, and they name a few guys who really bombed, and they're like, these guys did great in their interviews. Now, I will go back. One of the worst interviews I ever saw was that big defensive tackle that left Georgia early that shouldn't have.
Chauncey Rivers?
No. Chauncey actually ran out of his shoes.
He was, I saw that.
Who was the 5-star guy that
Trenton,
yeah. Trent Thompson blew it. Absolutely blew it at the podium. It was just
knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, and
some of that though is some issues he has. With
he had some medication issues, But again, the guys the ones that are up there, you had 10 guys. Even Rodrigo had a group of people around him, of one of the small tables, and they're like, this kid is legit. So.
One of the things I want to mention here is, and that you always we're reflecting back on what you get on UGA Sports Live and all the stuff we get. But I'm going to just toot my own horn here, and because I'm on toot Kirby's. But last spring I told you, after we had all those guys come out early, remember that we had some guys come out early, Kirby had a combine for all our players. So they know. Remember how we talked about?
You did say that. I remember that.
He had that combine, and he made them see exactly how they stood against the national current reps. They had a list of what it takes to get drafted, what line, all that stuff. He made them do all that. He made them go through the interviews. He did all that stuff, even the weights, everything. And to me, that really gave these guys a good idea.
A benchmark.
What they needed to work on, and we ended up with a few coming out, but maybe a couple didn't. Maybe LeCount, maybe. Who knows? Just looked at the whole picture, but another feather in Kirby Smart's cap to do that.
Now, that was bright.
I mean, it's not just like, they do these things. Hey, they did a combine over there. If you'd have been over there, you'd have thought it was in Indianapolis. No, they had the laser. They had everything.
Well, and you got to think that creates a new standard, too, for every program. I mean, if you're not doing that at this point, and Georgia is, you're doing your players a disservice.
Absolutely. And I'm not just
calling out all these other schools.
Look at that, the fire. I'm not just – you don't have to take my word for it when you get the interviews. Go to our YouTube page. Look up UGA Sports on YouTube. Watch the interviews. Don't take my word for it. They're all free. So if you're watching this and you're not a member of UGASports.com for your 27 cents a day, which is worth $3 more, as Coach points out, but we only charge 27 cents a day, go watch the interviews for free. Click on any part of it. Those are great interviews. The ones with Andrew Thomas, fantastic. Even Charlie Warner, he had people chuckling and laughing. And someone asked him, "Hey, Charlie, did you get the ball enough?" And he makes a joke out of it. So they all handled themselves really well, and I thought that from what we were told, that confidence and that ability. There were some guys that were not used to it. Some of those small school guys, they're not used to seeing 40 people standing there with recorders and cameras and everything, ask them questions.
Well, good for Charlie too, because that was a kid going back to high school. I mean, look, he was up in Rabun County. This was before the Gunnar Stockton era and the Braxton Hicks, so he was kind of a pioneer up there, and you could tell he spent a lot of time in the woods. You know what I'm saying? He was. I still remember to this day, probably the most intimidating interview I've ever done was with Charlie Warner, because he just stared me down the whole time, and I think he said about 8 words.
No, that's fair. I brought up when we were at Alpharetta High School him doing backflips.
Yeah,
I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." So we kind of he joked, but he did really well. 21 reps.
Ain't really? Look. That's a kid. That's a blocking tight. I mean,
he looked great.
Yeah,
he looked great.
Okay, these guys aren't going to play for Georgia anymore. Let's get into spring practice.
All right, before we do that, let's talk about our friends over at.
No, I just had to bust.
No, you're fine, and it's a good point because I could talk about this all day. And but
you talk, we're going to eat.
Oh my God! Let me turn off your mics, you. Oh my God! This is what I deal with, folks. They put the food at the other end, and these guys well weighing into it. Big shout-out to our friends at Athens Ford. They take good care of us. They have ridiculous deals on pre-owned vehicles. Now, of course, if you want a new one, let's see, right now they have 1,187 vehicles available, almost 1,200 vehicles available on their lot. So when you swing by there, you can take care of it. If you go to their website, you're going to get a $500 basically coupon off for anything you buy. You can buy a car in under 90 minutes. They have a quick thing there. You can sell them your car really quick. You can turn your car into cash, and they'll give you an offer so you can decide. You don't have to drive up there and have them go over it. You can just go ahead and do it online. You can chat with them. You can text with them online. But again, if you go check them out, they get a $500 off coupon. It's fantastic. But when you go and look at their specials, they have fantastic specials in their new vehicles. But I'm kind of a Clark Howard type guy. I love getting a new vehicle, but if you want to make the most bang for your dollar, go get one of their certified pre-owned vehicles. Everything you get from them under 80,000 miles will have a lifetime powertrain warranty on it, so you're going to get a incredibly reliable vehicle with all the bells and whistles. But again, their list of pre-owned certified pre-owned stuff where they go through and check all the stuff is phenomenal. So big shout out to our friends at Athens Ford. I mean, if they're getting drafted, they are definitely a first round pick. They're right off the bat. And shout out to them for sponsoring not only this podcast, but UGASports.com.
Hey, them nachos are good as hell.
I wouldn't know. Bastards.
Okay.
No, a lot of people asking about spring practice. It's right around the corner. When do we? When does it open up? The 17th? Is that right?
17th. So right now they're doing voluntary, workouts on their own. They do meetings with, as Coach pointed out last week, they can meet with the coaches. Right now they're doing voluntary 7-on-7 stuff. They'll go into spring break, and then, boom, March 17th. Spring practice.
St. Patty's Day.
So what day does Kirby have his news conference? Is that on Monday before it or Tuesday of it?
He usually does it the day of.
So that's the same day we're supposed to have our podcast. So
we'll get him to move it, because this is more important.
Yeah, we'll call in on it.
And then next day they have the pro day, I think. Here we go with the meatball sub.
That's what I'm talking about.
Outstanding.
Yes. See, this again.
Meatball sub.
Now you keep your ass down there. Now this is the
barbecue meatball sub.
Barbecue meatball sub. That again, this is when they switched over to Classic City Eats away from Champions. This was never on the menu before. So this meatball sub. I mean, just look at that.
But we got chicken too, though. I mean,
yeah, just look at it. And the grilled. They took the
flat top the bun.
Flat top. No, look at that. Oh my goodness. So. Yeah, I'll just leave this down here. You guys can.
All right.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about, at night when you go to bed, you go to what? Sleep. Right? I'm going to just give you a couple sleepers there.
All right.
Like sleeping pills. Couple guys here that have just done better than I thought, but I've been giving them credit for it for sure that's my fault for not giving them credit. But Seether is up to 235, 6'4". We're going to need him this spring without, we got Fitzpatrick's got a groin injury, which you pointed out. I didn't know till I read that, but I checked it out. You were right as usual. Usually you screw it up. But so he's going to be limited, and then, of course, Goethe is still coming back a little bit too. So, we don't have a lot of tight ends out there, but I'm really impressed with the fact that this kid was a little undersized coming in. He can catch the ball, but he's up to 235, and I'm not saying he's going to go out there and be a world beater, but I'm happy that he's taking advantage of our strength program, and that's a guy that nobody's even talking about. Natori Johnson. Over there with the O-line still, looking pretty good there. I mean, he's got an opportunity there, working at guard, moving around. With all these guys leaving all of a sudden, he's an athlete, highly recruited, sees the writing on the wall, is really working hard. I don't know what's going to happen to him. Don't go out there and say, hey, Don, I'm just saying he's worth looking at. See what's going to happen there.
That's awesome.
Deserves a lot of credit, too. He has done everything asked for him and asked of him. He was a top 50 player coming out of high school and has done nothing but work hard since he's been here.
Two guys that we redshirted that good that we were able to do it, that I think got a chance. Bill Norton up to around 310 now.
Oh.
And, looking good. And
he had a big frame.
Warren McClendon has really redefined his body a little bit. Everybody was talking about, trust is so much quicker, bigger. But Warren McClendon, I tell you, Scott Sinclair and his staff done a terrific. This kid really looks good on the hoof now, and he's got 4 years. So, I mean, now we can talk about all these other guys, but those are 4 guys that I think we need to help our team. You know what I mean? So, when everybody tunes in here, they can listen about the stars and all, but I just want to give those guys a little love. Then from a leadership deal, at the end of the year last year, we saw Malik Herring play like his head was, hair was on fire, He's doing a really good job setting the tone in the off-season program and stepping out and showing the kind of leadership that you got to have from a senior. And Kirby talks about that all the time. What are you going to do? Who's going to be the leaders? Who's going to be the guys that step up when nobody else? Of course, we know LeCount's going to be there. He's going to. But I'm just pointing out Malik here. And something Kirby did the other day, which I thought was really another sign of just, showing the players, give them a little reward. We get to the end of the off-season program. Like I've said this several times, but I'll say it once a year. It's like beating farts out of a dead mule. You get to the point where you just can't do it anymore. You know what I mean? And so last Friday, he took the seniors and, who basically are your leaders, and he took them over to the tennis match over there when they were playing against Tennessee, and they sat up there behind the stands. And, I mean, they were a little rowdy. They didn't know the rules and all, but they really gave our fans a little boost there. I thought they were great, but showed the Georgia pride. But, those kids, and I saw LeCount up there and talked to him a little bit and saw Jamie Newman. All those guys are up there behind the Dogs. But the point is, I think we got some good senior leadership here. You know what I mean?
I think that's really big because when you look at when Georgia played for the national title, you had 4 seniors that everything went around.
It takes a little bit of everything.
And Kirby pointed out, he's like, and it's not just because, and he mentions this all the time, and a lot of people kind of tune it out because, leadership is just one of those vague concepts that
it's a buzzword.
You don't see it on the stat sheet.
Right.
But Kirby's like, look, when I need a leader, I don't need just someone who's a rah-rah guy. Because remember, a lot of these players are like, if you're jumping around when the coaches tell you to jump, then you're kind of seen as a suck-up, and it's not cool to be a leader, But when you have somebody who goes up to a guy and says, look, you're phoning this in. You are not doing what's needed. I think it was a couple of the guys actually in Indianapolis. DeAndre Swift mentioned, I asked to address the team after that South Carolina loss. So when things are, it's fine when things are going well, and you have guys that can, push what the coaches are saying.
A lot of people like to address their team after that.
Yeah, they want to. There are guys that will push you in the weight room, and guys that will push you on the field. But there's also guys that will call you out when you're not doing your job.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get it means more coming from a teammate than it does coming from a coach.
Certainly.
Here's what happens, though, and philosophically, you get guys that are used to practicing a certain way, and I'm not saying that practice changes that much. It's pretty much the same here. But, guys that aren't playing, don't have to have the pressure on them like the guys to perform in practice, even though you want to develop people. But then all of a sudden they're in a point where they got to start doing things, and with the pressure on them. And so the expectancy level from the coaches and the players, hey, we need you to step up and and do the job with us. So I think that's another thing these guys got to understand, that you just don't – I think Kirby said that a couple of times here lately, that, you just don't – you got to earn that right. You just don't – it's not just a rite of passage here that you move up. So I feel like we got good leadership, and, the team's hungry. They're just like the fans. You get to a certain level, and the wind blows a lot higher the longer you get up, that higher the mountain gets. The closer you get to the mountaintop, that wind's blowing. So I think we got a tough schedule, early schedule there, at Alabama. You got, Virginia, which is a little different team playing in the first game. So we got to be ready to rock and roll. But I like some of the changes we made. We talked about them last week, and we'll see what happens.
Well, there have been a lot of moves, obviously, on the offensive side of the ball, and Joel Moody wants to know, who do you see as kind of some of the potential leaders over there? We've heard a lot about LeCount on the defensive side of the ball, and obviously there's some guys in the linebacker core that have a lot of experience under their belt. Who do you point to on that offensive side of the ball?
Well, I think Jamari Salyer's got, outspoken guy that really the kids respect. Hill is a little quieter and doesn't really talk as much, but they respect him. So those two guys are going to set the tone in the O-line. And then certainly you got some backs back there that are young, but they know what to do, you know what I mean? So receiver-wise, Robertson's an older guy, but he doesn't really, he's not a really vocal receiver. But I think it'll just be that's going to have to come. And from what I've seen of Newman so far, he's a very likable kid but, it's not just making sure everybody likes you but respects you too. But,
sure.
If you just think about if any of you guys out there would ever have – or y'all, I don't say you guys – if any of y'all would move to another town and high school and then have to go meet a whole new student body or be a new teammate your senior year, that would be a difficult thing. That's what we got here with this young man who – is going to be taking over for a guy that hasn't lost many games in the East for sure, and got his team the last 3 championships. So there's a big shoes to fill, and he's got to earn that job too. But it's still, I think, whoever the quarterback's going to be, he's going to be a leader too.
Bruce could tell us what that's like. That last year you spent in alternative school.
Yeah, well, that's it was. I was the guy who could get things. That was what I did. So,
speaking of getting things, our friends over at Aaron Overhead Doors, they get 5-star ratings by the truckload. We actually had, one of their reviews says 5 stars is not enough. What a great experience. Excellent in service before, during, and after. The folks at Aaron Overhead Doors not only sponsor the podcast, they also sponsor UGASports.com and sponsor our 321 reports. They do a fantastic job.
Hey, how about this guy on a 3-2-1 while you were gone on the recruiting?
I know, that was a great 3-2-1.
Hey, did you?
I don't like it when they do my job better than I do. This is wrong.
And I gave you that Dilworth scoop. He shows up there this weekend.
Yeah. Just saying. So you were dead on. You were all over the place. So good job on the scoop there. Almost as good a job as what our folks at Aaron Overhead Doors do. The big thing that I always try to point out about them is that their workers actually work there. They don't have contractors. They're not calling some guy up going, hey, I need you to go fix this door, and the day before he was fixing pipes somewhere, or the day before she was, doing welding somewhere else. These people actually work at Aaron Overhead Doors. So when they come to your home and fix your garage door, or install a opener, or coordinate the little buttons in your car to make the garage door open, the logo on their shirt is Aaron Overhead Doors. They know that if you have an issue, they're going to call the office, and they're going to be there to address it. So, pride in your work, and it means a lot. Just like our friends here at
that's the mojo pork. How did that end up down here by you?
No, y'all shut up. So our friends here at Classic City Eats just brought out the mojo pork. Look at that. This is why we're going. There,
try that.
Wrap your mouth around that.
All right. So, he's going for the nachos.
Yeah, I see. So anyway, we have, if you notice a trend here with our friends at like Academia Brewing Company, some of the best beer you'll ever have in your life.
Sure.
They have a chef in their restaurant who cooks fantastic food. It's not just, hey, we're a brewery, you know, we make microbrews. The folks at Academia Brewing Company are expanding production. They're taking off, getting bigger and bigger. But you go in, it's a fantastic restaurant. It's also a great place to get great beer. Their friends at Aaron Overhead Doors, one of the best customer service places you'll ever go in your life. If you need a vehicle, it's our friends at Athens Ford. If you notice a trend with these sponsors of UGASports.com, it's the best in their industry.
It's like we're not only subscribers, we're members. You know, we're like the Hair Club.
Exactly. I'm not only the president, I'm also a member.
Yeah,
exactly. So that's a great way of doing it. So again, I'm not trying to hoodwink anybody. I'm just telling you, when we meet with these people, and then we've met with others, and we've turned them down because they're like, "Yeah, we want to reach out to your Georgia friends." We're like, "Okay, you know, your fans." Like, no, like, you know, friends at Aaron Overhead Doors. They not only are, you know, fans of the show and sponsors, they are big Georgia fans themselves. So what do they do? If you call them up, you get 10% off of your services just by being a UGA fan. Who the hell does that?
If for anything, let alone something as expensive as a garage door.
So, you know, we're big. Shout out to our friends here at Classic City Eats for changing up their thing and expanding their menu. They're getting better. When we first started talking about Athens Ford, you know, they had like 800 cars on the lot. Now they're up to 1,200. Aaron Overhead Doors, you know, I remember when we first started, they had like 300 reviews. Now it's 600 five-star reviews. So if you see a trend there, Academia Brewing Company doubled their capacity of beer making. There's a trend there. Anyway.
All right.
Let's hit up some questions.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions today. Let's dive in on some of them. Boost Assendam over at the board, one of our longtime members, 2001. He got on the board.
Great story about what his handle means.
I don't know. I have no idea what it means. But I hope to find out one day.
I'll tell you.
Great news. He says, great news on Duan Malthus being cleared to play. He says, any speculation on how his strength and conditioning status kind of stands? I think that was never a concern, was it? I mean, he was able to work out fully, right?
I think a little bit of a misnomer about Duan in the fall. You know, it was just a case of ultra-conservative as far as what you got to understand when you have a brain injury. You just got to be – so, but he was running, lifting, doing everything that everybody else. He just was not even close to any other player, so he could avoid contact. But he threw the ball. I mean, he had as good a fall as you could have with what he had.
Sure.
So now he's doing everything. And I think in the 100% cleared, I think it was more in the, you know, just actually get hit. Maybe in the summertime. I don't know that for sure, but he'll be in the mix here for sure at quarterback. And Stetson Bennett's going to be in it too, because I promise you, these guys are really going to be surprised what you got there.
Philip Jordan Wells says that's a 5-star sub you guys got sitting in front of you. Yes, sir.
5-star, no question.
Ronnie Brown says, Roddy, we heard what Coach Donnan and Jake had to say about Scott Cochran last week. What are your thoughts? Also, do you think that this helps rejuvenate Cochran with the ability to advance his coaching career? I certainly think that we can all agree on that second part. You know, this is a chance for him to finally be on field and to take that as far as it can go. But your thoughts on the Scott Cochran hire?
A lot of people think that it was just a big FU to Alabama, you know, and Kirby doing that to spite them. I'm like, no, Kirby tried before he took the job to bring Scott Cochran with him. We saw Glenn Schumann before Kirby Smart's press conference was out on the recruiting trail. He was at the kid's house, you know, wearing a Georgia pullover or something. So we knew right off the bat that Glenn Schumann, again, a guy who was, I think, just an analyst. He wasn't an on-the-field coach.
Yep.
is all of a sudden a coach. Kirby is taking guys like that, move them up, and now Glenn Schumann, because he saw the potential he had, is one of the hottest linebacker coaches out there. A lot of people want him. A lot of people want to make him a defensive coordinator. Kirby Smart is a strong recruiter of players and coaches. So he knows what he wanted. Scott Cochran's wanted him ever since he's been here. Now he's got him. And Kirby, they're close friends. Kirby is not going to hurt his program by putting a guy who can't coach on the field. And what I was told about what Scott Cochran did at Alabama, he was always around the special teams guys. So he's going to know it. And they've got other guys he can rely on. So it won't be long before people are trying to hire Scott Cochran away because, hey, he's a great field position coach. And please, for the love of all that's good, don't think that a guy who is a strength and conditioning coach can't know football. It just
Let me just ask you
drives me nuts.
Do you know who the running back coach is for the Los Angeles Rams now?
I do not.
Thomas Brown.
Where did he start?
He started here.
In what? Weight room.
Yeah, that's right.
Look at you and your knowledge and good examples.
I mean, isn't that right, Stats? Okay. So I'm just going to tell you, if you know ball or you around athletes, you can take, you can take guys and mold them. But the thing that I want to say in Kirby's defense, you can't believe how many of his friends or how many guys that he's worked with that have tried to get on here.
Yeah. That's exactly my point, because I know that list.
It's hard to turn them down because you got to tell your friend, look, and guys without jobs, and you turn them down. So, and I've always felt like this is like Switzer said, my first loyalty is to my own family. My own family is who I got to support, and I'm going to bring in the people who are going to help my family stay, supported. So I think Kirby looks at it like that, and he, in this case, we talked about it last week. You're able to take away one of the real good guys that helped that program work on one of your biggest rivals.
Tua actually called Scott Cochran the backbone of the Alabama organization.
Well, and I mentioned last week something that people may not know about him if you don't look into his background, but he's a guy who came up through John Curtis High School in New Orleans. And so that's one of the preeminent programs in that area. J.C. Curtis is the guy who runs that place. J.T. Curtis, I'm sorry, is the guy who's the head coach there. So this guy has come up under one of the greatest high school football head coaches in America and then transitioned almost immediately to working to arguably the greatest college football coach of all time. The experience that you're going to garner from that is not going to be just how to lift weights.
I'll put it this way. If you will watch analysis that we do at UGASports.com or anybody does, I don't care what news organization you watch their analysis of football or their take, their hot take, and you give that more credit than a guy that has the credentials of a Scott Cochran, then you're an idiot, okay? Because he's around it all the time. If we can break stuff down and see what's quote-unquote obvious from afar, how about a guy who's on the inside?
Sure.
Again, I've never coached at that level. I don't work with these guys, but sometimes people go, well, I already knew what the hell he was talking about. I get that once a year. Most of the time I don't. But if you're going to give any of these pundits on TV, any of these talking heads, any credibility and not give it to a guy who's inside the system, then I just don't know what to tell you. So believe him before you believe a writer or a pundit.
If you don't think coaching's important, look at Alabama's defense since Kirby and Pruitt left.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. It's.
I mean,
yeah.
If you'd have told me 3 or 4 years ago that in the last 3 games that really mattered for them, the championship game against Clemson, the game against and even the game against us in the championship game where we ran up and down the field in the first half in the SEC championship game. Seriously, though. When you look at their defensive stats against Clemson last year, against LSU, over 30 points in the first half. 2 times they didn't even have anybody covered. I mean, I guarantee you, Roddy could have fireballed both of those in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you go to the Auburn game. I mean, and they've had 7 defensive line coaches in the last 8 years.
Wow. Oof. I did not realize that the turnover had been that significant, especially at that position.
So I think losing Cochran hurts them. I do, because you look at their turnovers on defense, and I'm talking about coaching staff turnovers, and that's why he made such a big play for Sark to stay there when he was offered that Colorado job. I mean, you get I don't know that he had anybody could take the job there for Sark, and now they bring in Charlie Strong in as an analyst, probably to try to help somewhat with their defense, and we'll see what happens there. But defense has been a real issue for Alabama the last couple of years.
Speaking of defense, Chicktown Dog over on the board, I'm going to expand this question a little bit because I like how he phrased it. He says, is Jermaine Johnson going to be the big Johnson we all thought he was going to be last year? I want to expand that question a little bit wider. Who do you see kind of stepping up at that outside linebacker position?
We're talking stats here.
No, who do you see stepping up at outside linebacker? I think Nolan Smith is going to continue to stay.
You have no idea how massive this guy is. I got on the elevator the other day with him. I mean, I'm glad he's my friend. If you didn't, he doesn't know me that well, but when I say my friend, at least he knows, he calls me coach and all, but I'm just saying, you don't want to get on the elevator with a guy like that and not know him, I wouldn't think. But seriously, you got him, you got
Aziz.
I mean, when we look at what Aziz did between the Sugar Bowl and last year and what he's done with his body and all his stats and everything, and then, you got a lot of good other guys that are going to step up too there. I think that's a position of real strength for us.
I think to Chicktown Dog's question, I think that last year was Jermaine Johnson, I don't say getting his feet wet because he's always played, but you saw him get more comfortable and be more productive as the year went on.
Well, it was the welcome to the SEC for sure.
Exactly. So, and all of a sudden he's like, okay, I get it. This little shoulder drop that I would do coming around the edge, I need to get more bend to get underneath these guys.
That's a good point.
Stuff like that. So, but
you always see
he got stronger.
You always see with JUCO kids though that are just so much better than the other guy. They don't need to use a lot of technique to use ability, but then you start going against some of these guys that are going to be pro guys that use technique.
Yeah, DJ Daniel, perfect example.
And I think Jermaine's going to be really good.
Yeah. Question here from Coach over on the board. He's a 2001 member, so a long-time guy as well. He says, Coach Donnan, when you recruited quarterbacks, what was it you looked for before offering a scholarship?
Yeah, I always like to just talk to him a little bit of man-on-man about what it was going to be like to be the quarterback at Georgia. Because the scrutiny you're going to be under is going to be just like any state, but in this state, you're going to have to understand that we're very selective, and we want a guy that can stand up to that because there's going to be some highs and lows, and the coach and the quarterback are going to get most of the blame, So I talked to him about, a lot of times this isn't a place for people unless you really want that. And if you make it happen, then you're set for life. You look at all the guys around here that are doing so well, like Shockley and Green and Zaire.
Jake Fromm said it.
Jake's going to be the same way. So I think that was the first thing. And then just you got to get that out of the way leadership-wise. And then, I always look for – I just don't think that you can be a quarterback unless you can move your feet, particularly nowadays. And it's obvious you got to be able to throw and do all that stuff. But moving your feet in the pocket, if you're just a statue back there, it's going to be very difficult the way these people rush the passer.
See, all we were talking about is arm strength. And then you're talking feet.
But accuracy, I say this, and anybody wants to argue with me can argue with me. You can just go to a Little League baseball game. There's a reason a guy's playing right field and another guy's pitching.
Oh, sure.
He can throw the ball across the plate.
Yeah.
Guy in right field can't throw it in the ocean from a rowboat. So he might be able to hit, but you can't teach accuracy. I mean, we're going to have Leach come here and talk at our clinic here, which I think, to me, shows you Kirby's more concerned about the coaches, the high school coaches, than he is about bringing in a guy from the league. You know, I mean, this guy's somebody's been on the West Coast that everybody like to hear, and he's bringing them in for the high school coaches. That, to me, shows you no ego there. How many guys would bring another guy in from the SEC?
No, sure.
So Mike Leach is a great proponent of the same as me. You can't teach accuracy. You can either throw the ball accurately. And
that brings up a good question, because we hear that all the time when they talk about developing quarterbacks. If a guy's not accurate, you know.
You can't fix that.
You can't. He's
Really?
not going to be. I mean, you can do it a little bit better, but, I mean, I just think you can either hit the guy or you can't. Now, you can anticipate and do a lot of things, but to be able to throw it in there when the band's playing, and what I always tell them, when you're throwing the ball over the middle, you got to throw it at a smaller target. Don't throw it at his head. Throw it at his teeth. Because if you miss the teeth, you got a lot to hit. But if you throw it at his head and you miss it, where's it going? So aim at small targets.
Aim small,
I like
small.
it.
Get the
I like
teeth.
it. Yeah. Brent Smith with a good one here for everybody. He says,
I always also like size, too. I'm like, the guy's big enough to see over the line.
he says, is the wide receiver room deeper than the running back room this year as far as talent goes? Do you think that they're deeper, Georgia's deeper talent-wise at wide receiver than at running back?
Well, we got more guys coming in when you add those guys, maybe, but I think I like our running back room just because you don't have a really established guy. Even though White's done some thing and Cook, you don't have somebody that's gone out there and rushed for all the touchdowns that Sony and Chubb and Swift has. So, but I like. Well, I tell you, when you look at those guys out there in the running back room, because Milton's here now, we got 4 guys that can walk on any campus in the country and play. All 4 of those guys.
Go to the front page of UGASports.com. Anthony Dasher is doing a series about what is the biggest question at each position for Georgia. And this is going to be the lead up to our March 17th kickoff of spring practice. Yesterday it was, will Georgia maintain that mantle of running back you? And then when you have a situation where, to your point, Coach, you don't have a Swift coming back, you don't have a Nick Chubb coming back, you don't have this is the first time. It's not a clear-cut number one. The battle between Zamir White and James Cook should be very interesting. Kendall Milton coming in is impressive.
I mean, what were their stars?
Yeah.
Every one of them 5 stars.
Yeah.
Three 5-stars and a 4-star in that room right now.
And then you got the guy from coming in from Colquitt.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Dejon Edwards,
I think
top
it's a
100
good
player.
room. I mean, every one of our rooms, if you were staying at a hotel, they would be putting you in the penthouse.
Yeah, but to his question here, let's look at today's question: is who is going to be the next wide receiver after George Pickens? George Pickens, 5-star wide receiver,
Sure.
Amazing production, led the team last year. Then you have Demetrius Robertson, another 5-star guy. Jermaine Burton,
You got
huge get.
Blaylock. You
Karis Jackson.
Karis Jackson.
I mean,
you got Burton. You got Rosemy. You got Robinson.
Yeah, Justin Robinson looks fantastic.
I mean,
even leaving Lad McConkey, you know.
Not worried about that right
Arian Smith, a legitimate
Track
Yeah,
star.
Hey,
track
what-
star.
what are we
Again,
gonna
so
do
that's
for
a great
Steve?
question. That's a tough – I don't know that there's an answer to that.
But the big thing for us is we got to make more explosive plays. We got to score more points. Do you realize every one of the teams, this is for stats just to verify, every one of the teams have won the national championship since we got to this new format? You know what the average amount of points they scored?
35.
34. Wow. What was that?
35. I was going to say 31.
34 and 5.
34 and a half. That's 35. It's like a medium shirt.
Yeah.
39. Jack Benny. This is a Jack Benny deal.
missed it.
You know,
39 points?
I mean, so you got to score some points. We had the least amount of points that.
That's 6 touchdowns a game almost.
I mean, we didn't score many points last year compared to to be ranked 4th in the country. Defense was overwhelming.
No question.
So maybe defense doesn't win championships anymore.
I mean, look at that.
I bet it still helps, though.
I don't know it helps. But
LSU didn't. I mean, they didn't rank in the top 25 in the country in defense.
There you go.
Talking about LSU, you talking about a mass exodus.
No question. Absolutely.
Now you want
I've
to
never
see
seen anybody lose as many players as they have, and coaches.
You want to see how does Ed O handle this year? Coach of the year last year, fine. Show me what you can do this year.
Sounded pretty good with that $7 million.
Yeah, no doubt. Speaking of wide receivers and LSU, we got a question from Chad Slim over on the board. Finally, one from me. He says it's a recruiting question. He says, "Can you talk a little bit about Chris Hilton? Why you think the UGA could pull a top-rated wide receiver recruit out of Louisiana, given LSU's success at that position and the need they'll have after losing Chase next season?" Now, I put Chris on my list several times at this point. If you're not following along with him, he's a 4-star guy out of Zachary, Louisiana, so just outside of Baton Rouge. Look, I've admitted it's going to be tough. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The pressure is immense on those kids. But Cortez Hankton has done a tremendous job of building this relationship early on, and now I think you got the pull of Scott Cochran, who's got those Louisiana roots as well. So
Warren's good down there too.
That's true. So you've got a lot of factors at play. Do I think Georgia ends up ultimately landing Chris Hilton? No, I don't. I think that LSU will end up getting him, but I do think that you're in a better position for a kid like this than you've been in a long time when it comes to pulling a player out of Louisiana.
Yeah, a lot of times the kid knows too much about LSU and not enough about us.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean,
let's see.
I want to leave there, you never know, but there's some good receivers out there that we're on, though.
But I also think if you look at I'll call it the Miami effect, when you talk to kids in Miami and they are able to point to 4 guys on the Georgia football team who are starting or who are playing a lot, when you start getting into Louisiana, and again, we have a rivals camp in New Orleans this weekend. We might actually be at. We're still got to make a decision there. When you look at Micaiah Tonk, you look at Cedric Van Pran, you look at some of the
Deron Branch out of A-Mile High School.
Yeah, you're like, hey, these guys are coming to UGA. Why are they going?
Right.
And we just talked to, oh my God, who's got the kid at IMG who's talking to Warren Brinson?
Oh, Tyler Booker.
Yeah, Tyler Booker. I'm like, what are you hearing about Georgia? He goes, man, my guy Warren Brinson, who was here last year, he's already there. He's telling me about it every day, and when you have someone, and Coach points this out.
Smith here, too, from IMG.
Yeah, when they're pointing out all the time, again, just like the leadership means more when it comes from the players, so does that approval when it comes to a kid deciding whether or not he wants to come to Georgia. If Tyson Campbell and Tariq Stevenson are telling a kid from Miami, you need to come here.
Yeah.
You're like, okay. It means more. So, Again, the 3 coaches will help, but the fact that you've got that toehold already with guys from Warren Easton High School.
Yes.
It just helps. It helps when a guy comes up here and he's on an unofficial visit and he comes in here cold and doesn't know anybody. He spends the first 12 hours trying to break the ice as compared to coming in here and goes right over to somebody's apartment or somebody's dorm room and goes, it just makes a lot of difference. You got that edge.
No question. No question about it. All right, let's see. A couple
rapid fire here.
Joel Moody here with a good one. He says, because of the quality of depth at receiver, could you see Micaiah Tongue possibly switching over to defense?
Yes.
Micaiah, we're going to have to see what he can do. He didn't get a lot of shots last year because we were struggling to try to establish some identity, so he didn't really do a lot of different things there. We got Landers back, too, who has – really, if he just play like he practices, and he made a big catch there in that bowl game. But you got Landers, and then, of course, Tommy Bush. I really think Tommy's just a victim of having so many injuries. It's time for him to be the Dr. Kildare. You know what I mean? Remember when Dr. Kildare was on, and he just worked real hard, and he finally got the job, and he kept working every show, and he really got a lot of patience. So I think that's what we're going to be, Tommy Bush, the Dr. Kildare of our team.
I'll talk about, real quick, working very hard. I want everyone to, if you're watching this on your phone, pause this now and go over to yourpie.com, download the YourPie app.
Pie Day.
Yeah. Again, you want to do this before March 14th, 3.14. That's Pie Day, when you can get any of their pizzas and their entrees for $3.14. If you have their app, you get an additional bonus. Okay, you get extra points for that. And they did stuff. I think they had something on Leap Day. they do these little notes all the time where you can actually get extra points, which gets you free pizzas quicker. So talk about working really hard. The marketing department over at europie.com is doing fantastic work. They are in overdrive getting ready for Pi Day. 3.14 for all you people with that UGA education. You know what that is. So, well, hell, hopefully a high school education, you know what Pi is. But if you don't know what Pi Day is, it's 3.14. It's March 14th, and they've been doing this for years. You're able to go in there and get a pizza for $3.14. It's worth it. But go ahead and get your points. And in years past, you didn't actually have to do it on that day. You could reserve your pizza for $3.14 and then get it like the next day, so you could avoid the line.
Not bad.
Again, talk about working hard. Those guys work very hard.
Good.
All right. Well, I guess this time next week will be, 1 week out of spring practice.
Yeah, that'll be the 10th.
This is our last. That'll be our last show before some actual pads get to popping.
Yeah, I'm excited. Again, when I look at you lost so many players to the draft and the graduation, but that recruiting class, all those early enrollees that are here, the Jamie Newmans here, I think now coaches got me excited. I had almost forgotten about Brett Sather.
I had almost written off Brett Sather.
I'm not going on a Mockingbird limb about it.
No, but I'd almost forgot he was on the team, Coach.
The guy's worked at it. I mean, he's gotten a lot bigger, and he's going to get some looks this spring. But
there's definitely a spot there for him. I'm a huge Natori Johnson fan. I remember
Natori needs to do like Schaefer did. Hang around, and now come back. I think Schaefer's going to have a big year next year. Maybe not get to do a lot this spring, but there's a lot to be said about. I mean, I had a guy that played for me, Brad Stafford, who was just a tremendous center, and he came along as a JUCO guy and just played better and better. And boy, it meant so much for him to play for Georgia. And he lit up old Jimmy Brumball from over there at Auburn when we played him. But he was the kind of guy that just wanted to be a Georgia Bulldog, and that means a lot to you when you got guys like that playing for you.
I remember when I interviewed Natori Johnson after a dog night camp. He was committed to Alabama, and I asked him about his commitment. He says it's shaky. And then, sure enough, later on he flipped. He comes to Georgia. The Alabama fans are furious. But then he has the diabetes thing, and it holds him back. This is a guy who's had to fight that. He's had a harder struggle than a lot of guys.
Sure.
Then he flips sides of the ball. But again, he's just a great locker room guy. Keeps everybody up. Just knowing that he's healthy and going at it makes you excited.
Guys move.
Yeah. Oh, well, when we had a rivals camp and we had two teams tied because we split them up into teams.
Yeah, he'd do a hell of a cartwell, couldn't he?
Yeah. They decided they were going to have like a
cartwheel.
Yeah.
They had like a 40-yard dash to see who the winner was going to be. One team put up a defensive end, outside linebacker. The other team put up Natori Johnson to be their running guy.
I mean, he ran track in high school.
Awesome.
People forget.
But the point being, the sleepers that you're talking about, Coach, that's got – when spring practice gets here, I did not know that these guys were kind of standing out. So I'm really looking forward to seeing them. I look forward to seeing Jamie Newman, the early enrollees, and then a lot of these sophomores and juniors who will now be in leadership roles,
Right.
So.
I'm excited because it's just so many new faces.
That's my
point.
And
that's cool. I think it's fun. Look, you had the Fromm years, and you had Andrew Thomas there for all of them, and DeAndre Swift, and those guys did such great things and were such good guys. But the passing of the torch is always exciting, and to see what can happen next, and with some fresh blood.
I want to see Warren McClendon out there.
If I'm an offensive player, you better come to practice ready to go every year because you're getting ready to get the dog shit knocked out of our defense. Excuse my language, but I'm just telling you, that's the only way to say it. Our defense is going to make our offense so much better, and we're going to struggle because our defense is so good.
Yeah.
But they're going to challenge them.
Number one defense in the nation.
It's going to be a war out there in spring practice. I mean, they're not going to feel sorry for them.
No,
they're going to come out there and give them all that stuff. I get mad at those defensive coaches. What are you doing running corner blitz on the first day of spring practice? We got to get our defense ready too,
Well, you're going to have a Matt Luke out there coaching. You're going to have Todd Monken out there. You've got new coaches on that offense who are trying to install their stuff against the number one defense.
Special teams will be intense.
Oh my God! And Kirby is a fanatic about special teams. Kirby, an absolute fanatic.
That's going to be a real issue there. Which one can get the microphone when he and Scott are out there on the special teams?
We did see that video UGA put out recently of Scott Cocker walking around during warm-ups or something.
I like this.
I like that.
I like this final comment here. Stone Cold Sassafrasquatch over on our YouTube page. He just called you Jim Nostradamus. So I like that. Nostradamus. I like that.
I can make a few predictions and make some bad ones too. But
yeah, well, like UGA alum 95 said on Twitter, he says, "Have you guys seen the new Scott Cochran video released by UGA? It's stronger than 3 rows of wild onions."
I like that. I like it. That's the way to take. Like, hey, let's use all that stuff. But appreciate everybody listening. It's good to have you back, Roddy. And it's obvious we got some groceries here that somebody's going to have to get rid of.
Well, we need to end the show because I'm starving. So shout out to Athens Ford, Aaron Overhead Doors, Your Pie, Academia Brewing Company, of course, 365 Game Day, whose webpage, whose Facebook page we were on, and 11 Alive. They actually had me on again after my
faux pas.
My faux pas the other day. 11 Live had me back on for Sports Extra, so shout out to them for not holding a grudge.
Couple quick shout-outs here from the stats department, Dave McMahon. Shout out to Herschel Walker, his birthday today. Happy birthday to Herschel. Also,
he looks 28.
I don't know. He could destroy me. Manny Diaz passes Dan McGill, all-time SEC men's tennis leader in wins. A very impressive. Congratulations to those guys.
Well-deserved, Manny.
And a shout-out to the Diamond Dogs, swept Georgia Tech.
Yeah, that's just glorious.
That's a good.
Anywhere, anytime. We'll play you at our field. We'll play you at your field. We'll play you at a neutral field and whip your butt 3 times in a row.
That's a good team they got this year. That's exciting. I've been meaning to get out there to see them because I know that they're playing.
Yeah, they wanted to go over to a little league park so Texas could hit some home runs in bat practice.
Ouch. Anyway, big shout out. When you get a chance, come by Classic City Eats.
Definitely.
Brand new menu, great beer, great service. You'll enjoy it, and we will see you next Tuesday. Take care, folks.